Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Village of Ruidoso. It's a special meeting. Today is August 24th. It's 2 p.m. And if you'll join me in a moment of silence, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the state flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
All right, thank you, everybody. If you have a hard time hearing us, it's because I'm located right underneath the skylight and it's raining, so we're happy about the rain. So roll call, please, Mr. Sena.
Mayor Crawford.
Here.
Councilor Salas.
Here.
Councilor Lutterman.
Here.
Councilor Cornelius. Councilor Coughlin.
Here.
Councilor Jackson.
Here.
Councilor EB will be here momentarily. We have a quorum, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 1 is a public hearing on the amended site plan for the Administrative Office of the Courts, AOC, on the new Magistrate Court building to be located on Service Road, Track 2, School Track, Palmer Gateway Subdivision. And Mr. Sena, are you going to be presenting this?
Mayor Crawford, members of the council, yes, I will be. This public hearing will be, as you stated, Mayor, this is for the new revised site plan for the Magistrate Court building here on next to the Horton Complex building on Service Road. We will have representatives from the 12th Judicial District, and we'll have representatives from the Administrative Office of the Courts that will also provide information, their architects, engineers, et cetera, Mayor. So at this point, at this time, I would have you open the public hearing for any residents that have any, want to provide any public comment, and then we can move forward with this item.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll open the public hearing portion. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to speak to this matter? I don't see anybody here. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Yeah, except these are all.
Mayor Crawford, members of the council, the clerk's office did not receive any emails or any type of communication regarding the public hearing either.
I think you finally got them trained. They're answering that question.
I don't have to ask it anymore.
Yeah. So is there anyone on Zoom that would like to be recognized? If you can push the raise your hand button. Okay, I recognize most of the names on there. I don't see anyone.
Jason, if you can lead the conversation for the AOC.
Yes, if you're ready for me to present, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
Can't hear 'em.
Can you please speak up and we'll try to turn the sound up here too?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Barely. We just have a lot of rain noise here and it's hard to hear you.
Okay, I'll try to get as close to my computer as I can and speak up. Let me know if you need me to repeat anything. But we're presenting this amended site plan because we had to make some changes to the original site plan to add additional public parking and secured parking for the court. So we think this new plan accomplishes both of those goals. And if you have any questions about any of the specifics of the site plan, I would ask David Edwards at SMPC Architects to answer any of those specific questions.
Okay, does any of the council, I think we're up loud enough over here. Well, I got a wheel on mine, but
Yeah, you're getting feedback.
is there any of the council that has any questions that they would like to ask? Did we, I know that we had some changes. We were talking about hopefully the aesthetics would be more of a substantial looking presence. Did we meet any of that stuff?
David, if you could screen share.
I'd be happy to. One moment, please. And I'm sharing the site plan
Right.
that was submitted.
Yvonne, if you could minimize the side screen. Mayor Council, when you look at the site plan, what they've actually done is they've turned the building to face directly west, and then the Sally Port is going to be in the back of the building to the east. On this site plan, the whole building and the whole construction has been moved slightly over to the east compared to the previous site plan that was approved, so that that parking lot lines straight up with that street that comes out on Service Road, and there's no awkward movements. The setbacks on both sides of this building do meet the required setbacks. We have had them put that into the details. The parking lot in the front, the first parking lot is a paved parking lot. The second is a gravelled parking lot. They're proposing to take it in that fashion just to help meet some of the cost constraints that they're working with. And then in the front of that, they do have a drainage structure, a retention pond or detention pond, whichever you call it, that's going to be in that area. Some of the flow is going to be going on to Service Road and flowing east, and they're going to be tying in to what Eric has been coordinating with them. And then some of the additional flow flows off to the west and does go down Reese Drive. So those have been coordinated. Other than that, if you can go to, do you have any questions on this site plan? And then we can go to the actual renderings that were provided as well.
Councilor Coughlin, do you have anything to ask? You're the most familiar with this property. I can see you grinning.
No, I'm not. To me, I'm not really seeing a whole lot of changes. So this is about what I had seen the last time.
The additional parking lot was on the last rendering you saw?
Well, we had a total of about 35 to 40 spots, and what I counted was 39 spots here. It's still, in my opinion, going to be a little tight, but it's adequate.
Okay. You want to go ahead and go to the renderings?
Certainly. These renderings are taken from various angles in the site plan. This is the main front entry. The next one would be a view that you might get as you're going down Reese Drive down into the canyon. And the other one here is what you might see as you're going down Service Road headed east.
And there on the exterior of this, you can see that they did add some stucco finish on the outside of it. And if I'm not mistaken, some of the window siding is I think you're proposing metal on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. This area here on these sides, kind of under the high strip windows, we're proposing a corrugated metal decking. Now, it's much different than a metal siding panel. It's a steel decking that we use in the construction of the roof. The driver behind this is it's a cost-saving measure, the thought being that this is a material that's already being purchased for the construction of the building. We'd be buying some of this extra to add as elements of the building to the exterior. We also have a fencing back here that I want to point out, and that's on the site plan, a secure fencing area that it's kind of working in that fashion there. And, we do have some back here as well. And that's an opaque screen wall to screen that secure parking lot from public view, the comings and goings of judges and staff, and then also, detainees. They would be brought into the Sally Port and into the building itself for their hearing, arraignment, whatever that function is. but the purpose is to provide a screen material from public view. The cost savings measure is that, like I said, it's already material that we're purchasing for the building. We can do things like paint it. Right now, we're proposing that this exposed steel outside is a galvanized
David,
metal.
just let me interrupt you there for a minute. We've informed you several times that goes through a separate process that needs to be submitted through Samantha. So you keep saying
Yes,
that it's
sir.
been purchased already. So I think we've.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. Let me clarify it. Nothing has been purchased yet. The idea is that when you purchase materials for a building like this, you're ordering it all at once.
Okay, I just want to provide clarification that you have been notified that is a prohibited material. Samantha can take that into consideration, but it needs to be submitted to Samantha for review.
Right. Yes, we are in the process of getting that together. I also want to mention that, there's other alternatives to that material if that's something that we find is unacceptable and just simply won't work. We can just make that an EIFS wall and then perhaps talk about changing the color down below to add a little bit more of a visual interest to the building if that's desired. I think part of the purpose for these is to show the building, show the design intent for this very discussion that we're having. So thank you for bringing that up and making a point of those panels, Manager Dodge. I appreciate that. And you're right, that is something that is, let's say, under discussion at this time.
Okay, and I know in the final drawings, you probably have some safety barriers for that. I guess that'd be the south end, east part of that building by the flagpoles. Will there be?
Yes, what we're proposing is planters. They're raised concrete planters that, you function as a planter, but they're, the real purpose is a vehicular barrier, so somebody can't drive up into that entry. I think you're pointing out a very good thing right now. We still have a little bit of work to do there to get that closed off there, where we've got our handicap parking and the ramping to get up into the main entry. So yes, that's our strategy right now. Rather than a bunch of unsightly bollards or something, we're proposing using site planters to create that barrier.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions on this one?
Is that why there's the solid material over the windows for a barrier, or what is that?
No, that's just aesthetics, I think, and that's metal, so I guess it will be approved metal to be over that.
Mayor, according to the code, anybody that's proposing to use metal siding needs to, submit the type of material to our planning director, which is Samantha. She takes a look at it and sees if there's other similar conditions that exist in the area. And if it's aesthetically pleasing, then she has the authority to approve it.
If you look at the other end of the building where there's no flagpoles, you can see the planters are built up high. And that's why I was asking, they should have at least some poles or something over there to keep an automobile from being able to go through them.
Yes, sir. That's what we're proposing there.
Okay.
So it sounds like we need to add one here from what I'm understanding you're saying, sir. Is that correct?
Yeah, on that side and then on the other side.
Yeah.
In the parking lot, go to the last picture, or the next picture,
Second to the left.
the other next one.
Right.
See, go up to the windows by the flagpoles,
Yes, sir.
and needs to be something kind of in there besides just a
need something.
curb stop.
Yes, sir. You're right.
Okay, I know that's a little matter.
While we're here, if I can indulge your patience, let me mark up this site plan, because what I've been doing is we have these discussions, I mark these up, and then you can see that markup. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So I'll put a line in there now, but it sounds like we need some kind of barrier there.
I wasn't so much on that side, but on the front of the building.
Okay.
And I believe that's it
Make
faces
some
east, yeah,
adjustments.
right in there, yes.
Right through here. And, we can kind of integrate those flagpoles into how that works and make it
Right.
quite pleasing. And It's also an opportunity to kind of define an entry plaza into this building and give it a little bit more of a presence or even a story, if you will. How do you get into the building? What's the path? Is it secure? Is it aesthetically pleasing? So I'll place these here in this kind of as a markup measure.
Okay.
And then that kind of creates our record of what we're talking about.
Okay. Manager Dodge has the magistrate court, district judge, and the ones that have been in on the conversation, Judge Lund. What's the other one?
Yes, Mayor, we have had participation from the district courts. And they have made a recommendation to move forward on this. We also presented this to the county commissioners as well. And, they expressed that they didn't have any concerns on it either, so.
Okay. And we have someone here from the AOC?
For the district courts?
From the district courts? Okay. Do you have anything that you want to add? You have to pull that microphone around. There you go.
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Hukari. I'm the CEO of the 12th Judicial District Court. On the phone, we may also have a few of our district court judges, but I just want to say thank you for including us in this process, and we're very excited to be able to bring this building to life, and I think it's going to really benefit the village.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other?
Mayor, I just want to add that Samantha Mendez, our Community Development Director, has ran this through our internal review process, and all the directors have had opportunities to weigh in on this plan.
What about the financial package that was brought up the last meeting I was at?
On the financial package, Mayor, they should be getting us a revised cost, I believe, now at the end of the month. I can't remember the date. Jason, do you remember when that is due?
Yes, we're expecting it either at the end of this week or by early next week, hopefully.
And Mayor, the numbers that we're at in the available funding in comparison to the engineer's estimate is very close right now. So there's been some additional changes that they have recommended, and we're just waiting to see where those numbers come in.
Okay, so we would wait on approval of this until we see the numbers?
You're approving the site plan at this time, Mayor?
Just the site plan, that's
Yes.
true. Okay. All right.
I did have a question,
Yes, sir.
Mayor. Now, there's no parking lot lights, light fixtures, correct? I just wanted to make sure that in the drawing, I didn't find any or even seen any, but it just made me think with that secured parking area, if they would put lights for that
Yes,
area.
sir. I can answer that by going to the design development drawings for the electrical portion of this. We are planning on using some lighting in there. We have had a meeting with our lighting consultant just recently to try and nail that down a little bit more and develop fixture cut sheets for submission and approval as well. But the general intent is to provide pole lighting in both the public and secure parking areas, as well as building lighting.
And those will comply with the night sky ordinance.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Would those lights be electrical or would they be solar?
I think they would likely be electrical LED fixtures.
And I
Most
asked,
likely, we've talked about some maybe solar lighting on the flagpoles themselves, but I think the lighting plan right now is to use electrical. I need to verify that with my electrical engineer, however.
okay, I asked that because a project that I've been involved with over in Roswell, they installed solar parking lots, and you don't have to run electrical.
Okay.
So that's going to reduce your costs, especially since we're getting tight on cost. And they provide adequate lighting. The only time you really need lighting out there, because for the most part, the courthouse, I'm assuming, is going to close at like regular business hours, would be more towards the winter. For people coming in and out, other than your security lighting on the building itself.
That's interesting. I think we're in the process of working through that now. Would it be possible for you to share a cut sheet on that fixture so I can kind of bring that forward?
I
See
can
if that's
get you
viable for this.
I can get you the engineer's name in Roswell, and you can talk to him. I don't know specifically the cut sheets and things like that. But
Okay.
but the engineer in
I-
Roswell.
I think that's a very interesting idea, and we should look at that.
Do you know about those? Okay, yeah. Our
Project manager.
Project manager. Our project manager was actually involved in that project over there in Roswell, so he can get the information for that.
Was that Mr. Greer or?
Yes.
Okay, I'll ask him.
Yeah. Yeah, those seem to work
Excellent.
really well for the parking lot over there. And Mayor, I do like your idea about not only from a security standpoint about putting that planter in front, but the one angle that I'm looking at where the flagpoles are kind of there, if we take away those flagpoles, to me, it looks like a fire station with roll-up doors.
Yep.
So when we look from the other angle with the planter in front of it, it takes away that look of it, and it makes it look like more of a modern style building. But from a security standpoint, absolutely. And then from an aesthetic standpoint, that helps to do that as well.
Yeah, at first I thought it was garage doors.
Yeah. Good, I'm not the only one.
No, it's been a real challenge to come up with a design that is workable. And a lot of this is, the bidding climate right now is a nightmare for contractors and people who are wanting to build. So we're trying to think outside of the box and at the same time give a quality building that really looks like a courthouse with very limited budget, right? So I appreciate those comments, and I appreciate your understanding as we move forward with this. It's really been a challenge, and I think it's been a positive experience to get this far. So again, yes, thank you for those comments.
Well, I can only begin to imagine what you're going through. This project has drug for quite a while, and as we know, building costs go up every month. So trying to stay within the original budget, there's got to be some creative working there to keep it within budget. So coming up with some of those things, I don't envy you at all.
Right.
Okay. We'll then close the public portion of today's, and then if we can entertain a motion in support of the amended site plan.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the amended site plan for Administrative Office of the Courts, AOC, on the new Magistrate Court building to be located on Service Road, Track 2, School Track, Palmer Gateway Subdivision.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion?
Just one comment.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate everything that they've done to certainly improve what it looked like before. We also were concerned about the signage on the building to reflect that it could be both a magistrate and a district court, and that's kind of down the road, but at least the comment was made and it was notated. The other thing is on that entryway, we made some inquiries as to how the drainage was to occur off that roof because we're in the mountains, and they've already seen to that as well. It'll drain back, not to the side, so that's why you don't see any guttering coming down.
Okay. Anyone else? Roll call, please, Ron.
Counselor Jackson?
Aye.
Counselor Coughlin?
Aye.
Counselor Cornelius?
Aye.
Counselor Salas?
Aye.
Counselor Letterman?
Aye.
Counselor Eby?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, folks. Now we'll move on to item number 2. Somebody say something? Oh, sorry. Item number 2, ratification of emergency contract for goods and services with SAK Construction LLC to perform TV and cleaning of the sewer line from Upper Canyon to the Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant, RWWTP, due to infiltration stemming from the July flood event, project number FLOOD 2021, in the amount of $197,606.84, including gross receipts tax.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This emergency procurement was stemming from the flooding event that happened on the 6th. The village was actually engaged in 3 different assessments, one with the village and high water mark to identify the obvious effects of the flood, and then we had also the Department of Homeland Security that came down and did an assessment with us, as well as the NRCS. After the manholes were identified to having some infiltration and debris, Adam, along with the rest of the project management team, decided that would probably be the best approach in order for us to capture all the damage that was incurred by the July 6th flood event. We needed to separate that from actually the restoration project that was just completed as far as the lining and the CCTV work. So that's the approach we felt was best, so that we can make sure that the village is able to apply and get all the funding needs to address the damages that have occurred. We know there has been some, we just don't know all of it until this work is completed. This amount was included in the disaster assistance program that the application we submitted to the state, and that was for the 1.3 million. So the money that or the funding that will need to be called gap funding for the DAP will also be the monies that will be going to the state and requesting for additional funds from the New Mexico Department of Homeland Security.
So there's a possibility that this $197,000 will be paid back for that?
Yes, sir. It's going to, like I said, it's included in that DAP application.
Well, what's the likelihood of it being approved? Do you have any idea?
Well, the state has funded other counties and municipalities in New Mexico for this event, or similar type events, flooding events. And I believe the last conversation we had with the state, they, and Tim, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong on that, when we talked to the Department of Homeland Security on Friday.
Mayor, we did have a meeting with the governor's office and the Department of Homeland Security, and the cabinet secretary, from my perspective, she was going to be recommending it for the governor to sign it. So I think the likelihood is very high, although it's not guaranteed.
Is that why you're all wearing your masks today? You don't want to upset the governor?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, just checking.
Mayor, may I
Yes.
ask a question? And I know that it was quite an event on July 6th, but if it was infiltrated, is it gonna, are we doing this and then if we have another big event, we're gonna be right back to where we were 2008?
Some of the manholes, I guess some of them haven't been raised and fixed properly, and here's the man that can answer the question instead of me gabbing on. Go ahead, sir.
I don't know if I can answer them all, but Mayor, Council, the 3 parts to this whole project is the third one is the hazard mitigation part of it, and some of the armament for the sewer lines is going to mitigate some of the infiltration for the manholes. And some of like the mayor said, a lot of these manholes are right near the river and are not armored. So when that river does come up with the force, that's when you start getting the infiltration in the manholes.
So it necessarily wasn't the sewer line in the river that got infiltrated. It was basically the manholes.
And that's kind of yes and no. Councilor Orderman, that's what the CCTV is going to show us now. That that we're doing the emergency procurement is they're seeing if there's any kind of damage to the crossings that we got infiltration from, and then any manhole that they're going through has debris or anything, and that's what we're checking on.
Okay.
So
Mayor, if I may.
sticks and junk.
Mayor, when you look at it, we've looked at the contract documents for SKA, and this type of an additional event is identified, as a flood. It's not covered under their insurance policy or
Sure.
their control custody of that sewer pipe during the construction because it was an act, basically an act of God. And that's where your FEMA flood insurance comes in. During that process, there was a manhole that was still under construction, and we're assuming that that's probably where a lot of the debris and material got washed into the sewer line. This cammering is going to actually go in there and confirm to see if there's additional blockage or additional material in places like the manholes that we can't see. We're able to see in the manholes and see that there was materials in the manhole, so we're suspecting that the line has material in it as well. But once the project's complete, which, there's only, maybe 5% of that project left to complete, it should be pretty tight. So future events, unless it damages the sewer line or the infrastructure, you're not going to have that same type of infiltration occurring.
Okay.
Okay? All right, thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Okay, any other further questions, comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
On this, it says, they're going to camera and they're going to clean it. It says, so they'll take care of any debris and is there a chance that lining's torn?
Mayor, the process is, Counselor, that they go in, they clean it so that they can get in there with a camera and view it to see if there was any damage to the interior of the sewer line. And if there is damage, then they would have to go do point repairs or an additional slip lining.
So when they say clean it, what do they mean by clean it? If there's debris in there that will be cleaned out, if they're available to do, if it's can be pulled out of there?
Yes.
And, one of the things that, when they're cameraing the line, a lot of that sewer line is, there's a lot of stuff running in the sewer line. So they actually have to run their jet rotor to actually see to get that good vision on the CCTV also. So it's kind of a two-part.
When Eric covers his section of it, I think he has some photos of the interior of the sewer line, what it looks like, and I think he could probably explain that a little bit better during his presentation.
Okay. You think?
Mayor, when that meeting with the secretary and the governor's office took place, Tim did an excellent job of explaining the problems we've been having with the bridges and with the sewer line and with everything else, and the some of the holdups that have been taking place and the inefficiencies to the processes. I felt like the secretary really listened and was somewhat surprised at some of the stuff, and I like you said, she gave the impression that she's willing to push this through and get it going, but nothing is definite. But it was a really good meeting, and I think Tim did a great job of explaining it all with information that Karen provided and the processes and the dollar amounts and the whole kit and caboodle. So I think that's one of the reasons that I feel pretty comfortable on this, that we will get reimbursed for it.
And thank you for taking my place on that day.
Yeah, I got to learn to block off that window. So
Yeah, because he saw you walk by and went.
Thank you, Counselor.
Sure.
So this money is going to come from the state. It's not from FEMA.
That's the point, yeah. He's saying it's reimbursable because right now we're at the limit on
Right.
the amount. So go ahead, Karen.
Yes, that's part of the disaster, the DAP, what we're calling the DAP, the Disaster Assistance Program that we applied for, and that is directly through the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
And then they're also talking about reaching out and getting other funds available to see what they can help us with.
Mayor, just for clarification on that, Homeland Security does get annual allocations from FEMA directly. FEMA's basically, comes from everybody's insurance policies pay into that and into FEMA and some of the funds allocated to that. So, and technically there are federal funds that go to Homeland Security for local disasters. But then if there's a national disaster that's declared, then they put in additional money into from direct funding in from FEMA. So I just want to give that explanation because it's really, the same pot of money, just different distributions.
I just hated to wait 13 more years on this amount to go with the other amount.
Oh, I made sure to tell the secretary about the kids that were born when
Yeah.
at the last incident that are now getting close to being able to serve on the council, so
Yeah.
she appreciated that.
Okay. Can we get a motion?
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion. Let me find it here. I move to ratify the emergency contract for goods and services with SAK Construction LLC to perform CCTV and cleaning of the sewer line from Upper Canyon to the regional wastewater treatment plant due to infiltration stemming from the July flood event, project number Flood 2021, in the amount of $197,606.84, including gross receipts tax.
Second.
Okay, no discussion further? Roll call, please, Ron.
Oh, my glasses are fogging up. Counselor Coughlin?
Aye.
Counselor Jackson?
Aye.
Counselor Cornelius?
Aye.
Counselor Salas?
Aye.
Counselor Letterman?
Aye.
Counselor Eby?
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item number 3, discussion and possible action on grant agreement with the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration, LGD, for legislative capital appropriation 21-F2791 to plan, design, construct, furnish, and equip the Wingfield House as a cultural museum and visitor center in Ruidoso in Lincoln County in the amount of $750,000.
Mayor Crawford, members of the council, we are very fortunate to receive this capital outlay funding on this project. I wanted to also recognize Rodney Grego and Samantha Mendez. There was some funding that came through, they were made aware of. They had it on the ICIP. They moved quickly. They got the capital outlay requests to our legislators, and we were funded. So this is a great project and can't wait to move forward with this. So I would ask for approval to go ahead and move forward with this. And once we have an executed grant agreement, we'll do a notice of obligation and move forward with the project.
Does anybody have any comments?
Mayor, I just want to comment that Ron failed to mention, because we don't want to make her mad again, that request came from the governor's office.
Exactly. That's the last point I was going to make.
I'll, if I may, Mayor, I'll add that to my thank you to the governor's office for this.
Okay.
Your grandparents wouldn't believe the number there.
Not at all. That property sold in the 70s for $80,000.
Wow.
You could have bought half of Midtown in part of the 80s. Okay, well, we'll get a motion, and I think Councilman Letterman would like to make the
I
motion.
would, thank you. I would like to move that we accept the grant agreement with New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration for legislative capital improvement 21F2791 to plan, design, construct, furnish, and equip the Wingfield House. Excuse me, as a cultural museum and visitor center in Ruidoso in Lincoln County in the amount of $750,000.
Second.
Okay, no discussion? Roll call, please, Ron.
Counselor Letterman?
Aye.
Counselor Cornelius?
Aye.
Counselor Coughlin?
Aye.
Counselor Jackson?
Aye.
Counselor Salas?
Aye.
Counselor Eby?
Aye.
Thank
All
you.
right, very good.
Mayor, just as an FYI, there's been some a pending change order, and we've been working with White Sands on, and just to let you know, it is under the 60,000 threshold, so I will be signing off on that, and then I'll include it in the FYI.
Okay.
Okay.
Item number 4, update on the July flooding event and damage assessment. And this one is Mr. Boyda, our Water Resource Director. And you should have an attachment or a handout.
Well, actually.
All right, Mayor Crawford, councilors. So Manager Dodge asked me to give an update about the July flood event and all of the assessments that we've done that Karen had mentioned during her item. Wonder if I can't reach it over here. There we go. Okay, so just to kind of overview of what had happened during this flood event. looking at the weather in the area, through July 2nd through the 3rd, the village, or the upper watershed, had a pretty substantial soaking rain. And we got about 2 inches of rain in a 24-hour period that really saturated all the soils in the area in the upper watershed. And just a few days later, on July 6th, we got a heavy isolated storm in the upper watershed that rained almost 2.5 to 3 inches of rain in a couple hours, and you can see this little cell here. So, the 2 inches of rain over a 24-hour period was quite a bit of rain, but this was more than that in just a very short period.
So explain to me the colors again. The blue means,
you're gonna.
I can't read them from here, and I can't read them.
So
the yellow and brown is the severe area?
This is a 3-inch, and this is, I think, a 2-inch. These, I think the green is like a 1-inch, and the blue is less than. Sorry, I was just trying to include a picture so you had something to look at.
I understand.
So when we look at our stream gauges, at the Ruidoso, at Ruidoso gauge, that's right at the Mescalero boundary. The storm event actually broke the sensor. So they'd installed a new, like a laser sensor, and the water actually topped over it. So this gauge has been taken offline, and they're working on repairs on it, but it capped out up at 1200 CFS. And since the storm event was really isolated to the upper Ruidoso watershed, we can make assumptions that the Hollywood gauge that's between Ruidoso Downs and Ruidoso is probably a pretty good indicator of the flows that we got coming through Upper Canyon. And so with their modified flow data, we were up at about 3,500 CFS. So that's a very substantial flow, especially considering when we go back into June, we were right at about 2 CFS. That's still pretty low amount of flow, but a 15 CFS flow is a pretty steady flow even for the Ruidoso.
So CFS is water going down the river.
Yep, so cubic feet per second.
Okay.
And so I'm going to show you a couple pictures.
Hey, Eric, can I ask you a question before you go on? How many gallons in a cubic foot?
Oh, man.
Just for the lay people to try and understand, because cubic feet per second is, okay, fine, but if.
This answer's worth $2,000 today on Jeopardy.
Your job's on the line.
I honestly don't know.
Okay. I'll see if I can look it up.
All right.
I'm going to guess that it's right around 10 gallons-ish.
7.48.
7.48.
7.48.
Yes.
So that's like,
That's a lot.
1,200 cubic feet is what, close to 10,000 gallons a second.
That's a lot.
That number sounds a lot more ominous than,
7.5
second.
gallons in 1 second in one area.
yeah. Holy cow. Okay, thank you.
So I wanted to show you a couple pictures of the flood event as it was occurring. So we've got we've got the Upper Canyon surface diversion, which I showed you guys.
Just like that.
What I showed you guys last meeting.
Yeah, it does.
That's the upper diversion there, just.
So, and then that is where the water goes when we're putting water into grindstone.
Yes.
And
Correct.
so because the water is churning and there's so much debris, we can't put water in grindstone from that kind of water.
No, we wouldn't. And this whole thing's silted in from this event.
Right.
I didn't want to take a gamble with videos because I've been to too many PowerPoints where people try to put videos in and it messes up. So I took a screenshot from some videos that Marty Luna took. This is off of McDaniel Bridge. So here's the road to McDaniel Bridge. We've got a pile up of woody debris that extended quite a ways. And then this is Main Street, shoulder to shoulder with water. And then we've got Main Road 2. So it's hard to see, but here's the bridge here. And then we've got the woody debris buildup, and we're flowing on both sides. And then flowing down, is that Fox Trail? That's right there. So Fox Trail was taking quite a bit of the water there. And so in response to the floods, of course, staff went to address the immediate emergency, but we also did assessments of our assets so that we could identify what type of damage we had. So village staff, and then we also worked with high water mark, went and did an assessment on village assets to identify damages and then potential mitigation needs for our assets. And this also included walking the sewer interceptor line, and Adam's crew popped manholes and looked inside of them for debris and other stuff. So this manhole here popped open, there's standing water, so we couldn't see debris, but because we saw standing water, we know that there's something in the pipe downstream and know that there's an issue. Also found other instances of infiltration. We've got popped manholes where we had sewage escaping. Here's another manhole where the whole lid had come off because flows went over the top and carried that lid away. And then we also found quite a few damaged private sewer lines. So a lot of the aerial sewer line crossings across the river broke. This one here, Adam, is by Hummingbird. This one actually snapped the pipe in the middle. This other one is up by the treatment plant 1 at the Mescalero border. And this one just broke the whole pipe and spun the whole pipe around 90 degrees.
Eric, just one second. When you say that these are private sewer lines, so they're not, so how, I don't know.
It's coming from the house to the main?
Yeah.
Oh,
So like, think about like so if your house is hooked up to sewer, you have a line that's running through your yard. This one just happens to have a line that's running across the river.
got it. So they were hooked up to our sewer line. It was just their line from their house to the sewer.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct. So Adam and Marty have worked diligently to get most of these crossings that broke in the river to, some of them they were able to reroute them and hook them up into other lines through gravity flows. But for the most part, a lot of them replaced with forced mains and went away from the river. So most of these have been removed out of the river with the exception of a few. So we also did an inspection of the FEMA sewer line hazard mitigation sites. So the flood event had a big effect on some of those river crossings. And so both Moles and Corbin and High Water Mark visited every single site and identified the changes that they could see in that area. And then we did a location by location meeting where we hashed through all of the differences and identified what type of different quantities there might be or how the design might have to be slightly tweaked. Luckily, a vast majority of the sites can just continue on as they were. Others, there's just some very minor tweaks. So we shouldn't be too heavily impacted by the flood event for the hazard mitigation project.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's several pictures kind of like this where they basically sprayed the gunite on top of the ground or the rocks.
Yeah.
And there's no footing or anything to keep from that thing from getting undercut. Will they
So
fix some of that in this next
Yeah.
phase?
So in this site here, this gabion basket has been identified as a critical failure. And so this whole area is going to be torn out, but the original design of the hazard mitigation was going to jackhammer this concrete out until we reached a solid surface. And then the structure was going to be pressure grouted and tied into the footer of that. So basically, as we replace the structure, we can match up with the hazard mitigation project and not have to change anything as long as we keep the same footprint for the gabion basket structure and replace it with whatever we're choosing to replace it with. And so a couple pictures of our various village assets damaged. So our treatment plant 1, and for those of you guys who aren't familiar with it, treatment plant 1 is a decommissioned surface water treatment plant that we've replaced the functionality of it with a booster station. So we run water from the treatment plant 3 through a pipe. It gets pumped up to the old tanks that this treatment plant used to provide. So it's still a valuable asset for us, even though we're not treating drinking water from there. But there used to be a gabion basket that ran along here. It completely fell in the river, and actually started directing the water towards the plant, and so it was eroding away the bank. We've since stabilized this and improved the situation, but our permanent repairs are planned for that location.
And that's at the end of,
Mescalero property line.
Correct, yeah. So basically right behind me in this photo is the tribal land.
right.
A lot of our utility lines that are crossing the river also had a lot of scour and other impacts. So our water lines, we didn't have any actual breaks of water lines, but we did get a lot of scouring effect, or we started to see damage on the concrete encasement. In this case, this is the Malone Drive water line that I talked about a couple weeks ago when I was talking about the Upper Canyon surface diversion. And so we've actually seen this little stretch of the river drop down about 4 feet in elevation. And it's caused this concrete encased line to start scouring out. And we've actually started losing some of the concrete pour has been starting to break away from the water line.
Eric, right below your description there's a couple of pipes. Are those old pipes or were they damaged?
So this is the old pipe that's been cut and capped for the new replacement, which was put at a lower grade. So the Malone Drive project was one of our general obligation bonds water line replacement projects, and we lowered it because of the scour, and so it still wasn't enough to mitigate this flood event. So this top one is just actually a valve box that fell down, and then this one here is capped pipe. This valve here is where it ties into one of the lines, and then it goes across. So these lines actually do have active water. So as part of our mitigation effort, we'll be armoring this bank. Some other spots that we saw impacts to that I've included pictures. The raw water line from the surface diversion at Main Road 1 we previously put in a grade control structure that was completely washed away, and there is some damage to the concrete encasement. And then the North Loop water line isn't exposed, but the concrete encasement is exposed and needs some mitigation efforts. Some of the bridges that encountered damage, the Mcdaniel Bridge on the left side. This is after they started clearing out some of the woody debris. And then on the right side, this is the Sleepy Hollow Bridge, which is kind of there by the Allsups at Sutterth and Meacham. If you were driving north on Meacham and you took the first left, that's Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
And then Main Road 2. So remember, a lot of the river jumped up over here. I took this picture from Fox Drive, so the water was coming there. We had some erosion on the backside of the abutment, and some of the other abutments were impacted, but Adam's gone through and done repairs to this site. But this site is going to be one of the bridges that will be replaced as part of the Hurricane Dolly disaster. And then Gavilan Canyon Bridge, topped over there. Quite a bit of debris removal, right, Adam? And then some minor abutment repairs, but definitely not as heavily impacted as the McDaniel Bridge. And then in Two Rivers Park, there's this railroad tie retaining wall that we saw some pretty substantial incising in this area underneath this abutment. And so we were already looking at trying to get some FEMA funds to replace it anyways as just a mitigation measure. But this flood really sealed the deal and really exposed this footer and undercut it. And then on the backside of this, Adam, I believe there's a sewer line. So we'll be looking at ways to mitigate that and protect the sewer line in the road. This is Robin Road, right on the top of this. And then, the further sewer line investigations using SAK and ProPipe. I was trying to get a photo of our actual inspections, but I didn't have time, so I just pulled one off of the internet. But this is basically, you got the inside of a sewer line. You get all the fun stuff that people flush and wash away. And so you'll get, fats and greases and dirt and grime that get on the pipe. And so when they go in there and do their jet rotting, it'll clean off all that grime so that you can actually look at the material and not the built up fats and oils and gunk. So that leads us up into our final assessment grouping, and that was the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, which is run through the NRCS. And this one's a little bit kind of a different funding source. So the EWP is really meant for the installation of recovery measures that are meant to safeguard life and property as a result of natural disasters. And any of the improvements have to be economically, environmentally, and socially sound. So what's unique about the EWP is it can be used on private land, which you don't see a lot of federal funds that are allowed to be used on private land. But to do that, you have to have a sponsor that's a legal subdivision of the state. So for us, we requested to be the sponsor for this program for Ruidoso. We're a legal subdivision of the state, so we can take on that sponsorship. With the funds provided, there is a obligatory 25% match, and then the continued operations and maintenance of the lifespan of the structures. So some of those types of work that EWP could do, but isn't necessarily limited to, is they could clean up debris and clogged waterways, repair unstable stream banks, repair severe erosion jeopardizing public infrastructure, and then damaged upland sites that are stripped of vegetation from either wildfire or drought. And then in instances where this program is activated numerous times in a 10-year period, and if the same piece of property keeps getting affected, it does authorize the acquisition of a floodplain easement, in which then the NRCS can do floodplain improvement practices to try to mitigate future floods. And so they don't fund any repairs or replacement to infrastructure. They don't repair other federal projects, repairs to houses, foundations, decks. They don't address problems that existed prior to the disaster or any non-essential restoration work. So this funding source is strictly a mitigation measure. If we had a broken water pipe, they wouldn't fix the water pipe. But if we have a water pipe that was scoured out and exposed entirely, they would be able to implement measures to try to protect it, to stop it from breaking. Or like a bridge abutment. So if our bridge abutment was still intact, but it was under threat of a flood because of the flood event, they would pay for additional riprap or gabion baskets or other measures to try to protect that asset. Hopefully this doesn't skip forward a bunch. So to do the assessment, we had quite an extensive team of staff from the NRCS came up, worked with village staff, and then our consultants with High Watermark. They gave us a lot of kudos for helping them find some of these locations and walking them through the whole project. I don't think they always get that level of support from a municipality. So they were very appreciative of that. We divided up into 3 separate teams. We had a Upper Canyon team, a Midtown team, and then we had a larger but quicker assessment on the interceptor line and the downs. And we did ask staff from the downs to attend. I don't think that the damages that they found warranted them to become a sponsor, so I think they did not become a sponsor. But they did at least come out and walk with us along the interceptor line. And so some of the stuff that we saw, admittedly kind of a bad picture here, but we've got a bank that cut out around this corner. Mcdaniel's bridge is just downstream of this site. So potential for putting in some large boulder riprap just to protect the roadway right adjacent to this corner. And then we saw a lot of undercutting of previous armament projects on the Rio. So this is another structure that they classified as a critical failure. So there's a substantial undercut, and this goes in quite a few feet underneath this basket. So this basket is basically just kind of hanging there in the air. As you go further down that stretch, you see the same thing, undercutting of all of those baskets. Here's another spot. This spot had dropped down about 2 feet. And again, there was a big enough cavity on the underside that there's actually a sinkhole on this top side where that material is starting to come out underneath the basket. And so you don't have to look too hard to find these. You just find the pink baskets and go look at them.
Eric, were all of these gabion baskets done after 2008?
Correct. So all of the pink baskets were done as part of this EWP program. We did also see complications with basically any type of retaining wall that we saw on the river. This is a little stretch that is up by, this house is on Main Street, but it's closer up towards treatment plant 1. Again, we saw incision of the river and undercutting. We had portion of this wall collapse.
Yes, thank you.
And then we also found some additional damage that isn't covered by the EWP. So we found a couple of houses that had foundation issues. And again, EWP doesn't fix houses. It just does mitigation measures to prevent bank erosion. So this house This isn't a deck or anything. This is the backside of somebody's house, and the river is flowing underneath it. And then we've had some other heavy infrastructure, private infrastructure collapse. And so we've reached out to these private landowners to try to help them navigate the process, but there won't be funding support for them through the EWP program. So just some general observations that we made with all of our assessment crews about the river. So when we look at the river floodplain, our river doesn't need a huge floodplain to mitigate the effects of flows like this. This is a picture in Two Rivers Park, and you can see this silt deposit line from where the high water mark was when the flood came through. So it didn't get that high. It had a little bit of space to spread out, but that was not an immensely wide channel. And in the same park, we've got a natural constriction point from these very mature ponderosa pines. And just this little constriction here with the absence of floodplain, and this was only a few hundred feet down from that previous photo, we had flows all the way up to the hiking trail up there. So just a little bit of floodplain drops the elevation of floodwater substantially. Vegetation, so typically where we saw vegetation, the flood had very little impacts. This is a little wetland area that is just right upstream of the Sleepy Hollow Bridge. And I've always thought it was a neat little area because there's just a little patch of cattails and some rushes here. But with all the water that was flowing there, zero impacts to this area. That wetland held up to those high flows that we saw in that area. Same thing here in Two Rivers Park. We've got some native willows. They completely knocked down horizontally, but their roots didn't give way. And if we went back to that site and looked at it now, that willow would be back upright and green. So their, root systems are very helpful in reducing erosion. But then when we look at properties that have had a maintained lawn up to the edge of the river, that's where we start getting substantial erosion. And this owner had already started making some repairs to the yard, and so there was some topsoil that they were putting there. But you can see, you can see the cut bank on the right side. So when you're maintaining a lawn adjacent to the river, and if you're irrigating it, those grasses, they only put down a very shallow root system. But when you let grasses grow, native grasses grow, they'll put down roots deep down, 3 to 5 feet, and stabilize that bank.
Oh, darn.
I don't know why this thing keeps disconnecting, but it does. The other thing is nuisance structures in the floodplain. So this area here, there's nothing here along the river. There's native grasses, they're short just because they were coming out of a drought, but the root system was still there. We don't see erosion, we don't see major effects. But as soon as we turn around, we take a picture and there's a patio that's been put out in the floodplain. And as soon as the waters hit that, the water became chaotic. It dumped out all of this debris material, and then it jumped bank and went up into this neighbor's backyard, the next house down. So typically as we see structures in the river, it impacts that one and the next downstream property owner. We also found quite a bit of debris, picnic tables, chairs, tables. There's quite a bit of furniture that is in the floodplain all the time and can cause issues to our infrastructure. The next thing is shear stress and water velocity. So if you guys can kind of think of back to the days when you were in physics in high school, maybe hopefully you guys took some physics in high school, there's three kind of common stresses. So we have tensile stress, that's when an object is being pulled. We got compressive stress where weight is being pushed onto something. And then we've got shear stress, and that's when you have something that wants to move horizontally. So you can think of a river system with water flowing through it. The water is providing shear stress to that bed material. And once we get enough stress, you get movement. And so in a lot of these areas, like this area, we have gabion baskets on either side. There's not a lot of places for water to dissipate energy. Typically, when you have a natural bank with trees and willows and rocks, you're gonna have swirling effects, and you're gonna have all these different impacts to water that are gonna slow it down. But in these chutes that have been created, it's just shooting out incredibly fast, and it's exceeding that shear stress for the bank, or for the bed, and that bed material is starting to move. And so right downstream of this, after you pick up that velocity, you start picking up that shear stress and you start moving that bed material. So this material is moved here, and then right downstream of it, it's built up in the bank. Whoops. And then the other thing is, we had minimal issues with any bridges that fully span the river. So this is Martin Road Bridge. It's the first bridge right upstream of Mcdaniel Bridge. And this one was able to handle all the debris that flowed down with the flood just fine. And it didn't have any substantial damage to it. So that's why all of the bridges that are being replaced are going to be full span bridges so that we can carry those debris flows through.
And all that means is there's not going to be the big culverts that could end up with being clogged.
Correct. So we want to be able to pass through,
Right.
If there's a big log that's flowing through, we want to be able to pass it through the bridges. So our next steps, we've contracted with Riverbend Engineering to just do a small scale river assessment to identify the impacts of the flood and help us identify strategies to mitigate similar events in the future, including taking a look at how we can mitigate the impacts of gabion basket structures. And, hopefully in the future we'll control the installation of gabion baskets a little bit more thoroughly and make sure that it's the last type of infrastructure to install. Because a lot of the cases, there probably wasn't a need for the gabion baskets. They probably could have gotten away with riprap or native vegetation. And then we're going to work within the confines of all of our funding to make repairs and mitigate damage to our infrastructure that has immediate threats, and then to mitigate river conditions that could lead to additional damage to assets, and then improve the ecosystem services of the Rio Doso. So, this is going to be another one of those multiple funding sources. We're going to have to find the best programs. We're going to have to apply for some additional grant dollars to do some other work to help us mitigate this in the future. So is there any questions that anyone has?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions there. Thank you, Eric, for the pictures and for the presentation you made on this flood event and the results thereof. But do we have the easements upon both banks of the river, and are we responsible for any type of future mitigation and restoration of the river? And also with the private, you said that the particular company worked with private individuals, and in that was a 25% match. So is that all the village's responsibility, or do they work with the homeowners also?
So as the previous sponsor of the Hurricane Dolly response, we do have some obligation to maintain some of those structures because we didn't pass them on. The O&M responsibility is 100% onto the owner. For all of our new installation of structures, we would make sure that all the long-term operations and maintenance of these structures are passed on to the individual private landowner. And then our goal is to require them to front the 25% match for the program.
And then just throwing this out there, since we've had several flood events in the last several years, it seems like that we're getting 100-year, 50-year floods, it seems kind of frequently here over the last 10 years. Could we look at to see if it makes any sense, just like the forestry department has the your zones around your home for fire safety, that we have some sort of inspection to where, especially if the property owners are going to be claiming the property, that we have some sort of an inspection that they maybe plant the wild grasses along the river banks and so on, just like you were mentioning, that would help mitigate and spread out.
Yeah, so I do think it's something that, with your guys' direction, we can look at doing some ordinance changes. If you look at the last comprehensive plan update, there was a section there that recommended that we restrict maintenance on the river to just a small section. So, of course, people want to be able to go down to the river, access it, look at it. But, if we just restrict that to, say, a 20-foot stretch of the river on their parcel and then have them maintain the rest of it with a proper buffer strip and riparian vegetation, we might be able to mitigate a lot of damage in the future. We could also look at, nuisance structures in the river, not leaving picnic tables permanently in certain areas, just because you're never going to know when a flood event might occur.
Yes, it might be something to look at there, you bet, to help mitigate future damage from other upcoming events that sooner or later they will happen.
So Eric, so under the EWP fund, the homeowner would be obligated for the 25% match, correct? That's what you said?
Yes, for structures, that's our intent. We don't have the funding approval yet, but for us to avoid donation of public dollars to a private owner, we would need to obligate that 25% match to the homeowner for the improvement.
Okay.
New structures.
And then we would obligate them to the ongoing operations and maintenance of that project.
Correct. So we'll have an agreement with the NRCS that says us as the sponsor are responsible for it, but we will be assigning it to the private landowner through an agreement between the village and the private landowner that says that they have to maintain it to a certain standard for the lifespan of the improvement.
Would that also assign any future liability for a failure of any work that was done? So for instance, let's say we go in, like we saw, we put in gabion baskets and they got undercut. Let's suppose somebody comes out and they build up close to that entire structure fails and part of their house falls off into the river. Would we have liability on that, or would that be a part of they be accepting any liability?
With our, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're entering into an agreement with the private landowner, we can make those stipulations in the agreement that the owner is liable for future damage. They would probably have a case to bring against the engineer who designed the structure and put their professional seal on there. But yeah, we could put aspects like that in the agreements.
Planning and zoning, you'd have something to say about it.
Well, Bill's going to too, because that sounds like most of that would be in the floodplain that you can't build in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor and Councilor, as you go back and you look at the events, and if an incident did occur, and I'm saying incident, any type of failure, if they tie it back to the engineering or they tie it back to negligence on behalf of the village, like for instance, lack of maintenance was the cause of the accident, then they'd come back to the village and we'd be liable. But if it was another flood event that came in and damaged it, that flood event's considered an act of God. You know, so the structural integrity, there's always liability.
Right.
But you know, liability has to be tied to some type of negligence.
Right, and by assigning the maintenance to the homeowner, if it's because of lack of maintenance, it then falls on the homeowner.
Yes.
Okay, and that was my concern, was that, you know, until you said that, is all of a sudden here, well, we're obligated to provide the operation and the maintenance of this for the lifespan of the structure, whatever it happens to be, and something falls in the future, you know, we kind of overlook it, so, okay, that makes me feel better, that would be part of the plan, to work with the homeowner, and they would accept that.
And you know, as part of their process, we might, you know, guarantee village continued easement and access to the structures. So, you know, the average homeowner might not be able to do a thorough job of inspecting a gaping basket, but say after a major flood event, we just go take a peek at the structure and identify any type of issues, we might be able to update the owner and say, hey, we noticed this, you probably need to fix it as part of your operations and maintenance agreement.
Well, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it's obvious to me it's not going to work. Can't expect citizens to be experts or know how to inspect the gabion basket, or what if they don't want to participate in the program?
Then
Are you going to make them do it and
No.
then lien the property? If they don't do it, then does it put the one next door to it down the river in jeopardy? I mean, this has got a lot of hair on it.
So, you know, the NRCS program is a voluntary program. So we've identified locations with the assistance with NRCS. But if the private landowners are not interested, which a lot of them did not want assistance from Hurricane Dolly from the NRCS, we wouldn't put any structures on there. There could be instances, though, that if something doesn't happen, it could have ramifications to adjacent properties, and that's probably a question for Zach for discussing the liabilities of that.
Sound like an act of God to me. So I don't know what liability they'd have. If it was another flood event. I don't know.
If they could have prevented it.
Maybe. It just sounds like too many pieces to that puzzle for the average Joe to work on it.
And that's why, you know, I had mentioned before, you know, it might be beneficial for the village to include that language in the agreement so that we can maintain continued access to do a periodic inspection for the benefit of the landowner. But when it comes down to the maintenance, we actually work with the landowners, identify the issue, and then they would be the ones who would contract with somebody to rectify the situation or perform it themselves.
And the way we get around the anti-donation in that instance, providing free inspection and labor, would be for the benefit of the community.
Public safety, yeah.
And especially if it's in conjunction with something that's similar, like the forestry certification, you know, having some type of river certification process.
I'm still wondering where all the debris came from.
That's amazing.
Where's Carl? Is there liability there? Oh, no.
Well, I still think, I've brought it up before, but I still think we ought to give a couple of guys a picnic basket and a GPS and have them walk that river every year and mark whether there's debris and there's 1 million railroad ties going down to that river, decks and stuff that just pop up every year. And if we could identify those and get them cleaned up, it'd help some of this, I think. And we could incorporate inspecting those gabion baskets at the same time. I think it would be worth the labor for a couple of guys to do that every year.
Yeah, with the property turnover and people going, oh yeah, look, I got the river in my backyard, they want to be right down there on the river.
Exactly.
And they're building a little deck or putting picnic tables and stuff like that.
Bridge across the river, see that?
Yeah, yeah.
How long would it take to inspect that? You're talking about the whole river.
Well, I mean, with 3 teams, we were able to inspect the whole river in 3
What I'm
days.
getting is, we have a forestry department, full-time employees, all the things that go with that for a forestry. And now then we're talking about maybe doing something similar on the river, all the way down. And where is the funding for that? How long does it take? You got 3 entities that did this one, and it took how long?
About 3 full days.
3 full days is all?
So, I mean, it would probably be, a 10-day job for a couple guys.
Well, and how much, in that map, it looked like there was quite a bit of it that was outside of the village limits.
Correct. So,
So it reduced the length that.
yeah, so really there was 2 crews that were in village municipal limits. We had that 3rd crew because of our interest in the interceptor line for the joint use board.
Right.
Well, and it keeps getting more and more complicated. Just to walk the river and GPS where a problem is just the start of it. Then you have to go have somebody drag the tree out of the river, or
Yeah.
unless, I don't know if we could put that back on the homeowners or not, but, I mean,
And some of it, Mayor Crawford and Councilor, we can't just go into the river and just clean out every piece of woody debris. It's part of the natural process. It's good for fish. It's good for habitat. There was quite a bit of woody debris in this event, but again, some of those full span bridges handle the debris just fine. And so we might be able to mitigate a lot of the impacts by having those full span bridges.
Yeah.
And where we do identify substantial log jams, that would probably be something for us to look, but we probably wouldn't have to go pull up the one log that's at a random location.
Well, that took quite a bit of work to put that all together and do all those inspections and inform us. And the pictures were a great photography, and it really told a story. So I thank you for doing that, because
Yeah.
I haven't been up that direction. I've just seen all the stuff down at this end. And it's pretty amazing. That milk, I kept trying to describe the river to people as the darkest chocolate milk you could think of. And it was just a very strange color.
So the track is, they've hauled off 7 flatbed or semi-loads of debris, and they still have that much there. Have you seen all the silt that they pulled out of there? Did they get permits for any of that?
So I do know that the NMED and the Army Corps visited with them. They were doing a lot of that work without permits, and I can understand their desperation, as I am aware of how expensive that track is, the engineered material. But they are, working with NMED and the Army Corps to get the proper permitting and try to do that correctly.
Yeah, because there's silt that's piled up 6 and 8 feet deep all down to the river. They pulled out of there, debris
And some of it is, I've been out there, and, a lot of times they've just been scooping out the river and they just put it right at the bank. And so a lot of it's just feeding into itself. And so once they get an appropriate process to get that material hauled out, if they have to carry it out, that should help out quite a bit.
They'd probably had a lot more if we had the proper bridges in place.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
gosh.
They would have took that track out, because the reason they were digging that silt out is because it was going over the culvert there onto the racetrack, and because it was full of silt.
And those culverts, there's some complications with the culverts there that, again, a similar situation. They really should have one larger culvert rather than 2 smaller ones. But the way that the river is there, it really needs a rock weir to help direct the water so that it's going through both of those culverts at the same time. And I talked with the previous manager there. might be good if you could connect me with the new manager just to talk to him briefly about it and what we had talked with Jeff before he had left.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do it. So you're saying that at one point, it looks like the CFS was up to 3,700,
It was probably 3,500.
3,500? Because the sensor broke and the laser broke at 1,500, 1,200.
Correct, and then
Just from the
Yep, so just in making the assumption that there wasn't flows coming in from the other major tributaries, we can make the assumption that it was 3,500 CFS through Upper Canyon.
And we think that the motor oily or the chocolatey color was from just regular vegetation degrading and,
Yeah, so with the, that 2 CFS that I was talking about, that's basically enough water to make sure that the whole river is just a big wetland. And so you got enough water going through there slowly, creating this oxygen depleted environment. You start getting a bunch of rotting vegetation and other materials, rotting invertebrates and fish that couldn't survive in the minimal flows.
and you got people wanting to stock the river up there. I bet there wasn't any fish left in that river after the flood.
It would have definitely been a stressful year for fish on the Rio Ruidoso.
Well, they're down in the valley where they can grow 2
Yeah,
heads.
that's right, they got 2 heads now, so.
They're down the Pecos.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, great.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and we were sitting right here, didn't even know it was getting ready to happen. Right sunshiny day.
No, I remember looking out the back door and it was clear overhead here in this building, but you looked over towards Upper Canyon, it was really, really dark, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah. Yep. Okay, item number 5 is update on the remaining 6 FEMA bridges and the critical path timeline moving forward.
Mayor, did you want to share this email that you just got?
Which one did I just send you?
Just to give a little bit of comfort to, the motion that passed on the cleaning, that they're asking you for a quote.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go ahead and share that if you would.
So the governor's office is reaching out, or Homeland Security, to ask for a quote on the emergency declaration for a press release. So that basically means that the governor's office is getting ready to sign off on it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And then Ira just texted me now about the same thing, so.
Brian Saylor. So I just want to make sure we get the appropriate letter put together pretty pronto, and we'll send that. Anyway, I just got it and I forwarded it.
On the 197,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, item number,
Forward this to,
council,
to Carrie.
have her write me up something? Okay. And I sent you one too, Coughlin, on
I got
some
that.
new COG stuff. Okay, item number 5 is update on remaining 6 FEMA bridges and critical path timeline moving forward. This is pretty exciting stuff, and I think Tim and has done a good job of getting these guys together. So is this going to be Adam or Karen? Karen? Adam? Karen?
Mayor and Council, we have Mayor and Council, I think the agenda memo included a listing of the 6 remaining bridges we have to address for the 1783 disaster. Like Tim had mentioned earlier, we had reached out to Department of Homeland Security as far as getting a timeline and when we can project receiving the SGA approvals that we had submitted. Those were submitted, or they confirmed, Department of Homeland Security, excuse me? Sub-grant agreements, what did I say? Okay. Yeah, the sub-grant agreements. They confirmed that they received those from the village on July 1st. So we are waiting for that. That will prompt the 50% upfront funding from the Fed, the additional funding that they increased each of those PWs. So that spreadsheet reflects the amended price or amended cost that they amended those sub-grant agreements for, along with the actual bridge type selection that NMDOT and the state had together. They put together that bridge type selection report to guide us on what kind of bridge we were going to be authorized to construct.
That's like my pet
Okay.
peeve, because I don't know what any of them mean. You could see the consternation on my face. Thank you for that. So can you go over, when you get to it, the exact bridges we're replacing? I know you've got them listed here.
Yes, sir. So, Adam, do you want to talk about the type of bridge and list them for them on River Trail as far as kind of?
Mayor, Council, the bridge type selection report from NMDOT in the state calls out for Steel Girder Bridge, for River Trail, North Loop Bridge, Mcdaniel Bridge, Robin Road, and Sleepy Hollow. Main Road 2 is called out for a prefab bridge. Now, the prefab bridge is just like what we did over here on Close Road, Close Road. It's a concrete prefabricated bridge. The steel girder bridges are basically 4 big steel girders, and on each side of the bridge, they pour a footing. So
it's a span bridge.
It's a span. Both of them are span bridges, yes, sir. So basically, they're both precast in a sense. One's metal, one's concrete. They still have to do footings on each one, the prefab or the steel girder.
And the River Trail is the one that goes over to the private houses?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the Robin Road is on down the road that crosses the river?
Yes, sir. Sleepy.
Just real quick, the big difference is timing as well.
Yeah.
Between the pre-test and so you might want to talk about that as well.
Okay. The timing for both either the steel girder bridge or the prefab bridge, there is a setback in time for delivery. I would think the steel girder bridge is going to be a little bit easier to get than the prefab. Being it's basically a puzzle put together of steel girders and steel decking and then a pavement over. As far as timeline to put the bridges in, I'm going to say they're probably pretty much the same in timeline as far as constructing them. They still like I mentioned before, they on both of them they have to pour footing on each side. The steel girder bridge is a little bit bigger footprint, to actually set the steel girders in, but they do have to have the footings on each side and the wing walls.
So, how many months for each bridge you guessing?
Do you have that in your timeline, Zeke, by chance?
And we're talking about doing these simultaneously in some instances, if we can?
Yes.
We're going to do as much of it at the same time as possible, understanding that we need to have access, so the construction of it, we'll take that into consideration.
Every
couple that we're going to have challenges on, so.
every bridge that we have is there's not one more important than the other. We need to get them all done. Now, like River Trail Bridge is going to have to go in before Robin Road, for access issues. For instance, there's a few, Sleepy Hollow, there's access through Evans Road. McDaniel Bridge, that's one way in, one way out. We'll have to get access, easement access for that one.
And the North Loop is the only one that you shouldn't have that much issue with,
'Cause it
except for
doesn't have-
getting in between the two houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, the easement for the getting between the two houses, and then they'll have access off the Mason crossing on the other
You're
side.
gonna need on the McDaniel Bridge, you're gonna need another temporary easement from.
Yes, sir. Well, one way or another, we'll have to obtain easements for access to those homeowners.
Temporary bridge.
Sorry.
So Mayor and Council, I've put together a quick timeline schedule here for you to look at. Should be included in your packet. Right now, we're anticipating each bridge, through the processes of engineering solicitation, basically from day one all the way through to the completion of the project, including paperwork and closeout. We're anticipating best case scenario about a 540-day process. That would be for each bridge, start to finish. Like I said, best case scenario.
I'm sorry, say that again? 540-day?
A year and a half.
Yeah, about a year and a half process, starting with the engineering solicitation, permitting, awarding of engineering, construction solicitation, once engineering is completed, all the back and forth, the approvals through FEMA, Homeland Security, that's going to be quite a process, during that time frame as well. So we're putting together a theoretical, year and a half schedule, start to finish. Hopefully best case scenario, if that can be beat, we'll definitely like to beat that, of course, but.
Just let me interrupt for 1 second, Zeke. Mayor, Council, there was three, when we met with the governor's office, there's basically three asks that we had. One ask was, we've identified about a $6 million gap in the sewer line projects and the acquisition of right-of-ways and, everything associated with the 08 flood event. The second ask is that we asked them to consider the funding of our latest declaration for the July 6th. And then the third ask was asking them to help us agree to a critical path timeline with the milestones that we're identifying, and then get FEMA back at the table to sit down and agree to that critical path timeline, so that we have a clear path forward on how we're going to approach this. What they asked us to do is to provide them with a couple of different options on critical path timelines, present that to them so that they can propose that to FEMA and then get it approved. So that's one of the reasons that we're handling it this way. Does that cover it, Karen?
Yes,
Yeah. That's what we're trying to attempt to do, is nail them down to a process so that we can see. What I explained to them is I'd like to understand this process from cradle to grave.
I think that's been the big issue right there, is nobody understood it. We were having trouble getting anybody. That's good, at least we're making that. So on the design part of it, when would we be able to start those issues for per location?
Mayor, right now, like I said, with the sub-grant agreements, as soon as we get the okay on that, that will prompt the funding, and as well, we are currently working on the RFP to have ready. We want everything ready. If we get it ready, we've been discussing some different options as far as whether we could proceed with a design build or not, and we've been having issues trying to get that clarification. I think that for the most part, we've decided or have found that through procurement reasons, we may not be able to proceed with that. But we are currently working on finalizing the RFP for the basic, what we call, how do you say that, Zeke?
Design, bid, build.
Design, bid, build. That's the process that we've used on the other bridges that we've done. So with that being said, we want to be ready and roll out with that so that we can actually put an RFP out to entertain a multi-award, so that we can do, like the manager said, approach this with all the guns that we have.
And Mayor, just to, not to complicate things, but the third delivery system is what AOC is using, which is a manager at risk. So those are the three different procurement delivery systems for building a project: design, build, design, bid, build, and manager at risk. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because you guys might hear those terms, and they're all different processes.
Yeah. And when Zeke was pointing out that timeline, the big portion of that, like we've incurred with Project Worksheet 155, which is the sewer line project, is that environmental approval. That's such a big timeline there. So like manager was saying, if we can approach all these at one time or in the concept of rolling them up together in some kind of grouping, then we can see maybe a more progressive timeline. So,
Well, and when you look at the timeline, 540 days, construction's less than 6 months out of that 540
Right.
days. It's all the red tape leading up to it, because according to this, construction wouldn't even start until July of '22. So, I mean, it's all that red tape that takes everything. And as long as, like when we talk to the governor's office and Homeland Security, they can help us to keep the ball rolling and not be backlogs and road jams to the process, then we can move things along. But if we run into what we've been running into with FEMA, I mean, this will be a 1,540-day project instead of 540.
right. And with that, being that we're going to be up in Albuquerque, I'm hoping that we can schedule some time with Department of Homeland Security and actually take that timeline that we're developing and ask them, which of these processes, what does Department of Homeland Security need to approve? What does FEMA need to approve? And can you give us some timelines? Can you dedicate or give us a timeline of when we can expect these approvals so that we can keep you all informed and the public informed on where we're at with all the bridges?
From your previous conversations with those entities, are you optimistic at all that they'll be able to give you a timeline?
Cautiously optimistic.
That's a very good way to put it, Counselor. Very good way to put it. I do believe that the state, in conversations with the manager, they are wanting to, they see the need that the village has, and that is to address the red tape issue. So they're wanting to help us. I just don't know how on their end, what their timeline is with FEMA and getting that kind of a commitment from them.
They indicated, like everybody else, they've got some staffing issues, which holds things up. And like Tim explained to him at one point, there was one issue that was dragging, and then finally a simple phone call and was approved the next day. So they do have the capacity to move quickly, and sometimes it's just got to be that squeaky wheel to get things done.
It's such a double-edged sword because, we need these bridges to help when we have these special events, the flooding that's coming down so it doesn't hurt everything else. And yet, we're fixing everything and then the bridges are the last thing. It's just so hard to.
Well, at least we've got some figures now,
Yes.
some amounts. And so on this, once they go through all the approval process and we go out to bid, the funding portion of it will be 50%.
Well, actually, as soon as they sign the sub-grant agreements and return them, that should initiate the federal side to release 50% of those funding, because I believe it's 75-12, I can't remember the split, but I believe the village is 7 or 8%.
Right.
So it'll release 50% of that 75% that the federal is obligated for. And with that, we'll get that, and we can use that for the startup and the construction of this. But keep in mind that these are all large projects, so they're all reimbursable expenses if they're eligible.
Okay.
But Karen, are these prices, the projection cost, are these today's dollars, or are these
Exactly.
subject to change?
That is based upon what that bridge type selection report that DOT and the state Department of Homeland Security, that's based upon that report that they did. That's what they're projecting.
So if it increases,
So then we're good if the cost goes
Right, as long as we do our due diligence, and that's where high water mark plays a big role in this. They do a lot of the documentation, and we make sure that everything's eligible so that when we turn around and close out a project, it is, there shouldn't be any issues. We've closed out Eagle Bridge that way, and we're in the midst of closing out Close Road that way, so you'll see that come before you when that is ready.
Now, these prices are the whole bridge, and we're going to have to pay the 25%.
7-8%.
7%.
7% or so, because the state has to kick in their
Their portion.
God, that's right.
17
That's
or
right, that's
8,
right.
whatever percent.
That's right,
In the end,
In the end, yeah, so we'll have to cash flow it.
we got to front it, but
right.
Right.
But this is the price that they're saying
That's what
right
they
now.
tagged for each bridge. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But don't you think that North Loop Bridge is a little expensive? That's the figure that just keeps blowing me around, 850,000.
Yeah, but that's a strange bridge.
Well, it's just right between those two houses, right over to that other house. I mean,
But it's kind of a curve, isn't it?
it's got tight access and
Yeah.
I mean, try and build a swimming pool, bring in a backhoe or bring in a bobcat or hand digging. You know, the less access you have, the higher your cost goes.
well, from the one side of the the river, the Grooms property, you'll have plenty of access, because that's our road there anyway.
Mayor,
It's converted into a part of his driveway, but
Mayor, you're correct. You know, on the Grooms side of the river, on the west side of the river there, there is quite a bit more access, but, you know, the property corner for the house on the southwest corner there, across from Grooms, you know, that's going to be, it's going to hinder their land right there, you know, because they go all the way up to where the bridge was. So
that's Dakota and Andy's house?
no, on the right across the road from Grooms, there's a little greenhouse, there's a wall there. That's going to impact her property also. So, I mean, it's still going to be a
The
tight
Bird
area.
property, yeah.
Yes. So like I said, you know, the price, the $854,000, you know, just to actually get in there and, you know, with the utilities and everything else, I think you're looking pretty close.
So are these listed in the order that we anticipate completing them, or is that?
No, sir. You know, what I did here is I just created a spreadsheet based upon the project worksheet number. There's no order in this bill here, just listing them out for us. Now, you know, Adam has identified there are bridges that we have to do before we do others, but as far as priority or putting them in any order in front of you, these are just listed in sequential order, actually.
Got it.
Okay, well, I'm glad that we have some positive news on the updates. It's good.
Yeah.
So, and it will be, the next thing when you finally get moving is how you're going to handle all the paperwork. And I know Zeke will not only, but he moves fast. Have you noticed he hadn't been here that long and he's already got a smoking new, beautiful Ruidoso shirt on. It took me like 6 weeks to get that. So anyway, we have a lot of confidence in you guys. You're doing a great job, but it's really nice to hear that we're getting somewhere on these bridges, and I thank the manager for really pressing this. So, because I know the public after the flood was asking, you know, what did you do with all the money?
Yep.
And so it's still on paper, so.
Well, the manager does have a big thumb.
A big what? Thumb? Good. All right, well, we appreciate it. Does anyone else have any comments? If not, then that concludes the agenda for today. We thank everybody for attending, and this meeting is adjourned.
Do you know, has the COG been notified that this stuff's in?
What was that? I'm sorry?
Oh, more stuff here. I didn't know
I
that.
don't mind still getting it, but I want to make sure you get it right that you're.
I didn't see this.
Don't forget to send it to me.